Okay, so thank you all for coming, and thanks Laura for this great opportunity. I speak to you from Troy, New York, which is located on the ancestral homelands of the Mohican Nation. They are the indigenous peoples of this land. After being forced from this area under tremendous hardship, their community resides now in Wisconsin and is known as the Stockbridge-Muncie community. My deepest gratitude to the Mohican Nation. First, a wee background. I was born in Canada. I grew up in Ontario. In 1981, I went to Banff in the Canadian Rockies for an 8-month artist residency and stayed for 12 years. When I left, it was with a life partner, Michael Century, and 2 young sons. Then a decade in Montreal before coming to the US in 2004. I've been working in textiles for over 4 decades. I was aware of the feel of fabrics at a very young age. I remember being stuffed into snow pants and jacket and listening to the swoosh swoosh of the pant legs. I remember the crunchy feel of smocking and the soft drape of Melton cloth. When I was 12, my mom bought me a dress made of wool. It was itchy and very uncomfortable, but I loved it so much that I put up with the way it felt. I clearly remember this jacket, the look and the feel of it, even though I had no image of it until recently. And I don't ever remember being lanky. I learned to sew early, actually making Barbie doll clothes. By the time I was a teenager, I was quite a good seamstress. I made this, my first quilt, in response to an exhibition called Pieced Quilts of Ontario. I had myself photographed in all of my clothes, revealing an early need for systems. And then I made each in miniature in the corresponding fabric. It wasn't that different from making Barbie doll clothes, only the proportions were different and they were flat. This was the first of many quilts and the beginning of my art practice revolving around the materiality and meaning of textiles. This quilt, at Mary Scott's insistence, was included in an exhibition of my drawings and plywood clothing shapes at Stride Gallery in Calgary. Mary's encouragement is one of the gifts in my life. While living in Banff, I carried on to make a whole body of work using woolen suiting fabrics and imagery of suits and bombs and other military hardware. While working away, Joan Stebbins of the Southern Alberta Art Gallery called me up. She said, "I know what you're doing and I would like to show it. No rush, just call me when you're ready." I can't say how much that meant to me. And I was reminded of that just the other week while discussing my plans for the show with Laura. I was asking her if such and such would be okay. She responded, "Barbara, you're an artist and you've earned the right to this exhibition. You can do whatever you want." I can only marvel that Laura's encouragement can mean so much, even after being in this game for as long as I have. I called this work Security Blankets, and here is one installation detail of the Southern Alberta Art Gallery show, albeit in another location. On the left is Wild Goose Chase, using the silhouette of the stealth bomber. And in the middle is the design of the stealth painted on the runway at the stealth unveiling. On the right is my first security blanket. I should say my first security blanket. And here are 2 of the works that I got to see again in 2018 in the exhibition Faites Main, or in English, Handmade, at the Musée National des Beaux-Arts in Quebec City. The left is security blanket child's quilt with the little boy bomb in the middle, and on the right is coffin quilt. At the end of that run, I made my first purely abstract quilt. When friend and curator Peter White first saw it, he immediately said, well, if your other work is called security blankets, then this one must be ground zero. Another gift. Ground zero had only two fabrics, a black wool flannel and a navy pinstripe. I made two more pieces like that, and there's something very reassuring about a dark rectangle of woolen fabric. Skip ahead 20 years, over a couple of bodies of work, a couple of detours into public art, a cross-border move, and here I am in Troy, in my second studio here, returning to those simple geometric shapes. I was teaching weaving and color and design at Emma Willard School, and working with the students immersed me in vibrant color. For the first time in my life, I think, I paid attention to color interaction. Before that, I think I saw mostly in terms of value. I began to quilt with these simple shapes in the studio. And this is a work in progress, the earliest one that you'll see in this show. Here's hemming the same quilt. I also experimented with small wool collages, but they were too random. I have always needed some kind of system or framework to contain my making. The logic needn't be transparent or rigid, but I had to know what it was. This took me a while. I was commuting to Montreal to teach on a regular basis. Other work took me beyond Montreal, towards Quebec City. I was on the road a lot. I noticed things, not just while I was driving, but driving gets you into a kind of a nice state, not dreamy, but open. I anticipated special landmarks like this, the High Peaks Welcome Center, or like this crazy motel sign in the middle of nowhere, or this bump in the middle of the highway. Looking became a game to notice colors and objects that resonated together. Add to that a long history of looking at art, and that gave the looking another degree of interest. Trucks are a great one. A black truck with a red tarpaulin can make me think of Rothko. Beautifully stacked poles or logs make me think of Jackie Windsor, or even, in this case, early Agnes Martin. A particularly nice sign can make me think of Ellsworth Kelly. Actually, almost any sign can make me think of Ellsworth Kelly. Those are obvious ones. My heart beats a little quicker each time I approach the walking bridge over Highway 15, south of Montreal. And because I get a kick out of stuff like that, I was seldom bored. When this show first came up, my first thought was, it's on my commute. I had visited the gallery numerous times in my to and fro, as I've often visited the Hyde in Glens Falls, the Tang and the Schick in Saratoga. I got to see world-class exhibitions on my commutes. And add to that, an excellent highway, clean rest stops, and the glorious Adirondacks. Add to that the sense of collegiality, culture, and belonging that I still felt in Montreal. It's no small wonder I commuted for as long as I did. Anyway, back to the topic. I think I must have resolved my system while I was on the road. My noticing became focused on color pairings, from the striking to the banal. I didn't just photograph on the road. I gathered images from teaching. I look down while walking. I liked walls. So back in the studio, I was set on my way. This was not just a green diamond anymore. It was Cinema Art, River Street, Troy, New York, March 27, 2015. This one too was Cinema Art. And they both are from looking out my studio window at this building, which was Troy's no longer porn theater. This piece was Dragon Fried Fish, the name of the Chinese restaurant on Watervliet Avenue in Albany. This is Pond with Dusting of Snow, Ways Mills, April 10th, 2016. And here I'm showing you the photograph from whence that came. So now I'd like to move to a snapshot in time. I chose this specific time, a 2-month period, to line up all the threads in my life. The foreground, background, professional. It will be a bit distracting to jump around, but just imagine this is what the inside of my head was like. I had been awarded a public art commission in 2016 for a subway station in Toronto. Though its original scheduled completion date was 2018, it is still on indefinite hold due to previously unplanned complete renovation of the station. In addition, know that my proposal was based on the existing 1960s construction and aesthetic. I had completed the weaving, and with the help of 2 of my former Concordia students, Giselle Souzer-Morin on the left and Lise Tardif on the right, we completed the embroidery for the half-scale 115-foot recreation of the Bayeux tapestry, where we embroidered only the landlines, the rocks, and the water. Omitting all signs of conflict, this idea is intended as a return to the security blankets, but in a different way and with a different intent. The textile part completed, I now imagine a sound component, and that will require a collaborator. And that requires reaching out. So as with the subway project, this work is on the back simmering. In February, at the beginning of February, I was teaching one weaving class in the most beautiful classroom in the world. And by the end of March, I was sitting in front of my computer, gravelly-eyed, all day long, trying to continue teaching that class. I had installed a little show at Carmen's Cafe in downtown Troy, which, due to COVID, is still there. I had completed and shown 12 framed works at the Linen Biennial up the St. Lawrence River in Quebec. Laurie Hansen from Albany had designed this little accordion fold book to accompany the works. They were subsequently included in the exhibition Interwoven at the Albany Public Library. Curator Jess Cohn, to my delight, displayed the accordion fold book this way. I had made a few tiny collages on handmade Japanese paper for En Masse, Thompson Giroux Gallery in Chatham's pre-Christmas exhibition. I was very much a part of the Yoga Lofts community in Albany, and I had one student of my own who came to my studio. I was still renting the studio in downtown Troy, but at the end of February, I left to move home, a casualty of the thriving gaming industry in Troy. But in fact, in my case, it turned out to be a very lucky break. I moved only 2 weeks before COVID, and consolidating, painful as it was very much the right thing. Here's the studio empty. Having worked for 4 decades making things, I had a dread at the weight of accumulation of large objects. We have a big house, but after I left the studio, I had stuff in the basement, the bedrooms, the attic, everywhere. I was haunted by this line of Virginia Woolf's. I actually still am. So, summarizing my laundry list of early 2020, I realized my attentions were scattered. I didn't need COVID to fall to pieces. Making the small collages seemed like the best and only way forward. They were compact. They gave me a pleasant focus to my photography. The activity became like an abstract, commonplace book. No expensive frames, no storage problem. I continued to photograph. It felt random, but in a good way. Here's a Toronto back lane. Here's a mat. I look down at my feet a lot. This is River Street in Troy. Here, 2 different check ginghams at the Placid Baker, the farmer's market. I looked in windows, and I looked at art in the wild. I looked at walls. And then in the spring of 2021, I found myself in color juxtaposition heaven. The gardens of Mouse Park Antiques near Paris, Ontario. I was on my way to Toronto to assume my childcare responsibilities at Granny Daycare. I needed to quarantine, and I was able to stay here at Mouse Park for 2 weeks with my high school friend and gardener extraordinaire, Allison, and her husband, antique dealer and painter extraordinaire, Doug Stocks. Isolation can be really good for productivity. This was my studio. My work table was a bed. And I just got to work. So now to the current exhibition. The show is made up of 3 different groups of works. There are 53 small fabric collages on handmade hagaki paper, which, by the way, means postcard in Japanese. I like that. There are 10 framed fabric drawings, and there are 5 wool quilts, ranging in size from 3 to 8 feet. That was a small one, and this is the largest. The collages are pinned directly onto the wall in overall grid formations, kind of like wallpaper. They're like little glimpses or things you notice in passing. The framed works overlay the small works in a conventional eye-level arrangement. They have more weight. They're more solid. The smallest quilts are hung on one of the gridded walls, again, conventionally at eye level. And the mid-side one is like the picture over the fireplace. The larger ones are on their own. So in this sense, you can imagine one installation overlaying another. And now for the title. Parallel play is a term for a stage in early childhood development where children, playing side by side, do not interact, though they may be doing the same thing, like these toddlers here. For example, one may have a toy backhoe and the other may be playing with a toy crane, but they do not cooperate to make something. Or if they're at the beach, they may each be building a sandcastle, but they won't be building a city together. This title appealed to me because it came as an idea. Not only was it an idea, but my mother-in-law, an educational psychologist, gave me the title, or at least she approved it. Marcia has been a wonderful supporter of my practice ever since I joined her family. This show made this work and this idea happen. Even this past spring, when I was immersed in making the small collages, I didn't know how I would use them. This came not very long ago. So, in the context of this exhibition, 3 related series of works, one could argue 2 installations, share the unique space of the courthouse gallery, each adhering to its own independent installation plan. Seen together, these works translate fleeting glimpses of color pairings into tactile reminders of place and experience. Just as one day folds into another and another, it's their accumulation that gives form to the whole. When I started this body of work, and even when I first exhibited it, not this show, but a few years ago, I thought that the photographs might be included. It's taken 6 years and this exhibition to really know that they belong in my process, not in the work. In fact, they muddle the whole stew. So if that's the case, is revealing my process to you a problem? It was decades before Ellsworth Kelly revealed his delightfully quirky process in his book project, Line, Color, and Form, which I don't know well, and Tablet, which I do. Tablet was published jointly by the Drawing Center in New York and the Musée Cantonal des Beaux-Arts in Lausanne in 2002 to accompany the exhibition. Even after such a wait, the disclosure of Kelly's process was seen as, quote, a precarious step to take. That from the book's introduction by Catherine de Zager. To be fair to her, I must include also what follows, and I paraphrase. But it is also with pleasure and wit that Kelly hands back to us his repertoire and storage of images compiled from the surrounding world. I consider this divulging of his process to be a profoundly generous act on the part of Kelly. In conclusion, this installation, Parallel Play, could even be described in quilt language. The walls are the fabric ground, the quilts and the framed works are the appliques, and the small collages are the quilting lines or ties, holding it all together. And isn't this what we're all trying to do all the time anyway? Hold it all together. Thank you. Got it. There you are.
Thank you,
Okay.
Barbara. That was so wonderful. And I when you asked that question about sharing the process, in my head, I thought, yes, it's so great to know that process. And it is a very generous act. So I thank you for that. And I also mentioned that we do have some of those booklets in the gallery if people are curious. It is fun to see that, but you don't need to see them to enjoy the work. And like you said, it could be a distraction. I'm just going to check our chat room real quick. Oh, nothing there. Okay. So I think I can open up the floor. If anyone has any questions for Barbara, you can raise your hand and I can unmute you if you'd like.
May I just say it's so lovely to see you all. It's just so lovely.
Isn't it great? Yeah. Yeah. So I want to mention again, because some people might not have been here in the beginning of the talk, Barbara's actually going to be in the gallery next Saturday from 12 to 4. So it's a good time to visit the gallery. That's going to be November 27th. And she'll do the same on December 11th, 12 to 4. So mark your calendars, come by and meet Barbara and see this amazing exhibition. I'm so glad you've got those install photographs in there just to give people a sense. But it's so wonderful when you walk in the room. I mean, it's just the presence of that work. It's just really yummy.
Well, you see the lighting much more clearly in the photographs than you do in the gallery. It's not so apparent that there's spotlights. It's softer. Right. It was hard, it was an interesting lighting challenge because really that one wall with the 10 framed pieces, well, I think there's 8 on that wall, or is it 7? 7, but it's the whole wall, so it's hard to figure that out. But right. It's interesting. I just want to mention, if you want to learn more about Barbara, she's got a great website, barbaratodd.com. And Barbara, a lot of your work before this. That's unfortunately old, but. Well, you don't have this new work on it, but it's so interesting to see some of that earlier work. When we were putting a show together, you talked about that color, the weaving class at Emma Willard, and how that opened up color. So the last number of 6-7 years, I mean, the color is just, I would think you would have been working with color all your life. But it's quite a switch. I'm not even really sure that I'm working with color. I'm using color, but when you see painters working with color, like I'm kind of using it in a conceptual way, and sometimes it really resonates and sometimes it doesn't, but it's kind of different from really working with color. Well, I don't know. I mean, I feel like there's a textile surface, so you've got surface. There's so much the interaction of color. It's is Joseph Albers somebody that you look to or learned from or thought about? That I haven't learned as much as I could from him. I think I've learned mostly from my, oh God. This is too flip, but I'll just say it anyway, from my students. I've got, oops, wrong one. I've got some questions in the chat. Let me get rid of this, sorry. Let me move this over here. Bab, so moving, tears, lovely to see Michael, Adam, Lou, and new baby. And then Laura says, I am interested in your choice of grids, question mark. And then Harmon says, color is using you, perhaps? Okay.
Yeah. And there's another, I think I'm so sorry, everyone, but somebody was raising their hand. I got a little notification.
That was me.
Oh, yes. Okay, good. So yeah, you can turn your audio on.
Yeah,
Did you have
great.
anything for Barbara?
Hi, Barbara. Thanks very much for the talk. I just wanted to ask you a couple of things. In the idea of parallel play, it seems that the other possibility is that there's the influence of art and all of those artists and movements that you admire. And then there's the influence of everyday. And I love the way that you put those things side by side, and there's an equivalency. And I think it's always been there in your work, which has made it, to me, so engaging.
Aw. This is Joan from Saskatoon.
So that's an observation. And then I have a question, and if you wanted to comment on that, please do. But I have a question. The intimacy in scale of the smaller collages, you know, versus your very large quilts. For you, what is the potential there, or what are those really small collages and that intimacy perhaps offering you or us in a way that it seems to me it takes us somewhere else than the very large quilts?
Mhm. Well, small things can do big things. And I wouldn't have known that unless I'd made all those small things. But I think they're doing a very big thing in this show. And so that's one thing.
Mhm.
If you don't make things, then you don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
Especially if you're someone who really has a practice of just making things. Once they accumulate, then they become even material. But I just love that they're portable and I can put them in a little box this big or take them out. And there's not so much at stake. And I'm truly, truly annoyed by the accumulation of things that I own. It's so that's it makes me happy to do these little things.
Seems that it offers, they kind of function as thoughts, you know, little moments, little conversations, little connections in a way that is much more immediate.
Right. Yeah. Thank you.
Great. So also, Barbara, David Brickman is got his hand raised, and David, you can unmute yourself. And we'll, yeah.
Okay. Great. Hi. Yeah. So I appreciate, Barbara. I appreciate your comments about Ellsworth Kelly, and I hope that you'll answer yes to this question. Did you see his show of postcards at the Tang?
Oh yeah.
Wasn't that fantastic?
Yeah. I kind of love almost everything he does.
Well, the thing, you know, we were talking about process, a revealing process, and those certainly did, I think, in his case. And one of the things I love about his work and yours is that it's not readily immediately apparent that it's drawn from life, but yet you've made it quite clear that your work is drawn most directly from life. And I just love that about it. And this is something that was sort of the secret about Kelly as well. And he drew his shapes from things he saw, mostly, maybe not entirely, but
right.
You wouldn't know that from the finished work. But seeing that, you know, in the process, it makes it tells you a lot about what it means to make abstract art. Yeah,
you see the book up on my bookshelf. Are you familiar with that book?
Too small in the screen right here.
I'll go get it.
Can I borrow it?
It's called Tablet.
Wow, nice.
So it's the book I was referring to
Uh-huh.
in the talk. So it's sketches and random newspaper clippings and stuff like that.
Right.
I'm sure there are many wonderful artists who are doing things. I sound funny to myself. Am I okay?
No,
You
you're good.
guys?
Yep,
Oh, okay, good.
you're good.
Sorry? Okay, anyway, that there are artists everywhere making things that are quirky, drawn from nature, drawn from things, and we don't see them. And we don't necessarily see them. And I kind of am mad at myself that I go to Kelly so easily because he doesn't need any more attention. But I just love the clarity and the beauty of his work. And if you want to know more about what I was just saying about people seen and not seen, there's an amazing, I think it's only about 6-minute video of an interview with Phillip De Barlow as one of the short Art 21 films. So.
Most likely you can Google those now, right? They're online.
It's free. It's online. I think it's YouTube.
It's
Yeah.
Public.
Yeah. She's a British artist and her name is Phy, I think Llida, Barlow. Very encouraging.
All right. I will do that. Yeah. And Elizabeth said, the modesty of the small work is their power. That's I agree. Yeah.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
And then Joan is agreeing. Good insight. Okay. Am I missing something here? I'm sorry, I'm a little rusty on the Zoom thing.
Do you have your hand up, Elizabeth? Okay.
I see.
Elizabeth has her real hand up.
Real hand. Okay, Elizabeth, would you like to unmute? You can unmute yourself.
Sure. Hi.
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 Thank you so much for this. I mean, Barbara, it's such a delight to see you and to hear you speak about your work. It's so inspiring. It reminds me of why it's important to do this kind of work, why it's important to keep doing this kind of work. And that's the thing that I really feel is so important with this exhibition or with this time in your life, is that you're keeping doing it. And that's so important to me. And it's so hard to do that sometimes because it's possible to get discouraged. It's possible to feel, nobody's watching or it's not important. And
well,
we're watching. And it's important. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're gonna make me cry.
Well, I'm already crying. So I think a few of us have been crying through this. I've read a comment, I think.
Yeah.
But it's so moving. And I think that I just wanted to kind of reaffirm your decision not to include your reference material, your reference photographs, because what happens is that the reference photographs can be specific, whereas the work that you're showing us is so open to different types of interpretation. And so when we have to return to, sometimes as an audience member, if we see the reference or if we understand the reference, we get stuck there and we don't get our own kind of thoughts going. So what you've done is you've allowed us to do our own wandering and imagining by seeing the work without its so-called original reference, because you know very well that the work proceeds and continues in a tangent or many tangents away from the original impulse and the original reference for it. So I'm so glad that you've taken those out, and I think it's a really good decision to I love your generosity to share that material with us, but it's not necessary for me as a viewer. It's just a kind of like, oh, that's interesting, but let me think about what I want to think about. Okay. Anyway,
Yeah, exactly.
I
Oh,
thank
thank you,
so much.
Elizabeth. Remember our conversation just like a month and a half ago when I remember perfectly. You said, you know, there's only so much meaning we can make of our own work. And I'm glad I'm getting some help.
That was very, very well said, Elizabeth. And a couple of other comments in the chat are agreeing with you. So, well, you know, while it is very generous of Barbara to share that process, when you walk in this room, it's the work it's very powerful. I think of it as an installation, and you don't need to see that booklet to feel it. So.
No, the booklet's really, the booklet is not as huge a problem for me as the first time I showed the work, where I actually had photographs on the wall. And it was 50-50 up until the day the show opened. Would I do it? Would I not do it? And I almost had to do it in order to realize it was a horrible idea, which I did, and I regret it, and I regretted it. So this is the first chance that I've had to do something with this work since then. And I'm just so grateful for it. And it was the right time. It didn't have to be 6 months later. 6 years later is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Not the same pieces, but the same thinking.
Well, you were still making some of those small ones a week before the show opened. Didn't you add a couple of the little ones, the postcards?
Well, yeah, like the day before.
Yeah. We're on a roll.
I miscounted. I was really off.
Yeah. And did I let me make sure I'm not missing anything. Joan, did you have your hand up for a question? Okay, that was from before, just making sure. Let me just check our time here. Well, we've gone 45 minutes. It's usually 50 minutes. So last call for anyone, if you want to ask Barbara any questions, we can stick around. I love listening to Barbara talk about her work, so.
Somebody asked a question about the grids, but I didn't understand that.
Let me go back to that.
Do they want to ask that question?
Let me find that question.
Barbara, it's me, it's Laura. I asked the question. I've asked you this question a million times on our walks. And maybe this gets into revealing your process or, or talking about it or whatever, but I'm always interested when you integrate what you're looking at into, you need, I guess you're saying you need structure, whatever, you choose these grids, these linear grids to say it. And I'm always, in my mind, there's a lot of different choices on how you would put it all together in an organization. So I'm always just interested in your grid-like self. And
it comes from that tiny moment when I was lanky at 13. I think I really don't like to do this again. At least Ellsworth Kelly was a really nice person, but Carl Andre said, interesting parts do not make for an interesting whole. And I think it might have been not necessarily make for an interesting whole. And I think if you want to do work like this, if each thing isn't organized and in some sort of consistent way, I'm just going to lose it.
Yeah. Well, it's totally amazing, my friend. It's so beautiful. It's just great. I see what you see on our walks in those pieces, and it's just really personal and lovely. Thank you. It was great.
Aw,
Oh.
Victoria.
Yeah,
Oh, there's Marcia.
You can unmute yourself if you'd like. Oh, wait, we're not, you have to, there you go.
Okay, hi. So I keep thinking, Barbara, just all your trips all over the years, over the border. And when I see all of these collages, one color against another color, I just wonder if you think about, I don't know, it reminds me of a person crossing the border all the time and living in two places, two countries. Bilateral existence. I don't know.
That's really
corny.
interesting.
It's what I think of when I,
Yeah.
remember when I visited the studio a couple of years ago and thinking in the back of my mind, you were just starting to do those, two color compositions then, I think.
I guess the answer is no.
It doesn't, consciously, it's not.
I don't think about that. Now, at least the orientation is right for the border. For a while, I was thinking that the shapes had to be vertical, and I was really happy to have turned them on their sides. So it was like a landscape rather than portrait.
Well, just a thought.
Yeah. Another layer of meaning, maybe.
Right. Now the installation looks stunning. I just can't wait to see it all together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Marcia. That's my mother-in-law, Marcia Century, who we had the discussion about parallel play.
I'm gonna ask her if she wants to unmute. Marcia, you have to unmute yourself. If you float your, do you know how to do that?
She just did it.
You're on. Marcia, now. We can hear you now.
Sorry, I interrupted your discussion. It was just by chance. I was checking my email. That fun.
Well, welcome.
Don't mind me, I'll just listen.
Okay.
Okay.
Discussion.
Wow.
Okay, great. Okay. So, again, Barbara, thank you so much. It's a fabulous show. Barbara will be in the gallery next Saturday, 12 to 4, and also December 11th, 12 to 4. And our gallery hours are Wednesday through Friday, 12 to 5, and Saturdays, 12 to 4. Actually, I should let you know, the gallery is actually closed Friday after Thanksgiving. We're going to have a post on social media and on our website because the two of us, Tanya and I, will be away. So, okay, everyone. I think in the chat, there's a lot of thank yous, good insight, fabulous conversation. Can't wait to see it in person. So great feedback, Barbara. You're awesome. Your work is great. All right, so I think we're going to, wow, they're coming in like all these wonderful talk. Hi to everybody. Okay, Barbara, thank you so much. And I'll see you all at the gallery. All right, good night.
And thank you, everyone, for coming. Bye.
Okay, see you soon. Bye-bye.